Hello everyone, my name is Asalee, co-founder of Survivor Alliance, an online platform supporting survivors of sexual assault, and I'm here today with Antonio Dorado.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about his experience in the military, his PTSD that he is dealing with, has dealt with, and his strategies for self-care, as well as sexual assault in the military. I know Veterans Day was technically yesterday, but due to scheduling difficulties, we're doing this video today. Please forgive us. And welcome to another day. I think it's day 6 of self-care, 21 days of self-care tips. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So Antonio, if you could start us off telling us a little bit about your military experience, that would be great.
Sure. So I joined the Marine Corps in 2003. I did a tour in 2006, and I did a tour in Iraq. I got out in 2009 and have been out of the Marine Corps since then. So I did 8 years and with a tour in Iraq. So.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
So you said that you served a tour in Iraq, correct?
Correct.
And due to this tour, you served in combat and you've experienced PTSD from that combat, is that correct?
That's correct. So after my deployment, I suffered from what I consider more of a mild form of PTSD. PTSD, I think, has a lot of misconceptions about the severity of it. There's a lot of belief that PTSD surrounds the veteran with night terrors or severe trauma. PTSD is a wide-ranging scale. There's more severe PTSD and then more mild forms, which is what I suffer from. I have I get nervous around people being just behind me and me not being able to see them. I get nervous when cars follow too closely. I don't suffer from nightmares, but I do suffer from those little things of discomfort that really does stem from my tours in Iraq, from the training that we received, where we were not supposed to have vehicles come too close to us, or we would always have our back secure. So without that sort of thing, it makes me nervous. So I have definitely some light forms of PTSD that I suffer from.
Thank you so much for sharing this. So PTSD, to clarify, is post-traumatic stress disorder. And what we're talking about today is that it is very commonly associated with someone who has served in the military and done combat. A lot of the early research associated with it was related to veterans and other men who served particularly. There wasn't as many studies done involving women. So recently, more and more studies have begun involving women, and they found out quite a bit. And I'm going to just kind of go through a few statistics with you really quickly. And so based off of the report by the U.S. National Comorbidity Survey Report, there is a lifetime prevalence of PTSD among North Americans at 7.8%. So 7.8% of North Americans will suffer from PTSD at one point or another in their life. That being said, for women who have been sexually assaulted, the lifetime prevalence of PTSD is around 50%. And one study actually reports that 94% of women who have been sexually assaulted experience PTSD symptoms within the first 2 weeks after the assault. So we're kind of changing the stereotypes associated with it right now and bringing more awareness to the fact that PTSD can be very, very prevalent with women who have experienced sexual assault. And it does take a lot of different forms. As Antonio was saying, his PTSD isn't necessarily nightmares and staying up from that, but more so in relation to people being behind you and cars being close behind you. And I think that relates to women in the sense that, let's say a woman was assaulted at a nightclub, then she might have these different biological reactions to being in a nightclub where her heart might be racing or different physiological things might be happening to her, which are the triggers of it. And so another thing that we'd like to talk about is the prevalence of sexual assault in the military, to bring awareness to it this weekend. We're really, really appreciative to anybody who has been a service member and helped out our country staying safe. But that being said, there is a lot of sexual assault within the military. Did you have any experiences with this personally, or were you confronted with any sexual harassment in your unit?
So within my unit, I did not experience any sexual harassment and or assault. I didn't see that personally. We did not have a lot of women in our unit specifically, so we were devoid of that sort of situation. There's definitely a lot of jokes that go around in the military, a lot of locker room talk is how it's been told lately, but that sort of thing definitely does happen. As far as sexual harassment and sexual assault, I never experienced myself. None of my friends necessarily experienced it, but there's definitely, like you said, there's a lot of research being done as more women join the military and join combat units, where there is that sort of stuff happening. And it's important that it gets highlighted, and I really do appreciate you and Survivor Alliance highlighting these sorts of topics and issues about veterans and their experiences.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So women currently are making about 15% of our military service. So like Antonio was saying, it's not that women are so, it's not 50-50 in the military yet for women. And so it's really amazing that your unit didn't have any instances, or that you didn't see specifically any instances of sexual assault or harassment, but, you know, rape culture, that exists still. But anyways, I also wanted to bring some attention to statistics about sexual assault in the military. And so I got these statistics from Protect Our Defenders. It's a nonprofit which honors, supports, and gives voice to the brave women and men in uniform who have been raped or sexually assaulted by fellow service members. And they, on their website, have a fact sheet, which we will be including in the comments below. And on this fact sheet, I'm just pulling a few of these statistics from there. One of them being that in 2016 alone, there were 14,900 members who reported instances of sexual assault. Of these 14,900, 8,600 of them were women and 6,300 of them were men. So I think that statistic brings a lot of awareness to the fact that it does happen with both men and women in the military. It is not just women who are being assaulted. It's about 70, or even more than that, 65, 45, I would say. And that these rates of penetrative assault were unchanged from 2014. So the military has been getting really good at getting people to speak out about their assault. We've seen a huge increase in the number of reports that have been happening. That being said, 81% of people still claim that they did not file any reports when they were assaulted themselves. So there is a slight increase, but you know, a lot of work still needs to be done, and we really appreciate the military addressing this, and the Department of Justice is really, or the Department of Defense has really been taking a lot of steps to bring more awareness and encourage more people to speak out about their experiences. That being said, when people do speak out, there is a lot of retaliation that we're seeing. And so 1/3 of survivors were discharged after they reported, the study found. And a lot of these discharges were not fully honorably discharged. There were some different things associated with it. And so it really, I mean, they're encouraging more people to speak out, but at the same time, we see these retaliations happening against people who do speak out. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword right now. Do you have any comments that you want to make?
Unfortunately, there is a structural system in place in the military that makes it difficult for people or accusers of people within the chain of command, people who are higher up within the system. If you're sexually assaulted by somebody within your chain of command, it's very difficult to report those sorts of things, just how the military is structured. They are trying to address that sort of issue by having independent verifiers outside of the actual chain of command trying to address sexual assault issues, but there's a lot of pushback because the military doesn't like oversight from civilians. So that definitely does play a part into trying to address these issues. And like you said, this is a fairly new concept for the military that we're dealing with. Women haven't traditionally served in the military in the positions that they're now open to now, especially combat roles. When I went in Iraq in 2006, my unit was a combat unit. Women are generally were not allowed to be in combat units until very recently, within the last couple of years. So I was not exposed to that sort of sexual assault, as I said, but there were some women part of our unit. So yeah, I mean, the military is trying to address the issue, but like you said, there's still a lot of work to be done, and they're working as diligent as possible. I hope so.
Thank you. Um, Thank you for bringing more attention to that. I think another thing that just kind of, there's two more statistics I'm going to throw out there. I'm a statistic person. But in relation to prosecution, we all know that the judicial system isn't the best for survivors of sexual assault in the nicest terms that I can say. And so of these people, remember 81% of people didn't report, but the 19% that did report, of those, only 13% were prosecuted. The people who committed the assault or the perpetrators were prosecuted, and only 4% of those 129 people were convicted of a sexual offense. So of the 14,900 members who reported being assaulted last year, only 124 of them might have seen justice, which is, pretty alarming numbers. But we're making moves, and we do have to give props where they're due that the military and the Department of Defense is bringing more awareness to this issue. And one of the ways that they're doing so is they're providing treatment for military sexual trauma. The Department of Veterans Affairs, VA, defines military sexual trauma, or MST, as a sexual assault or repeated threatening sexual harassment that occurred while the veteran was in the military. And just in 2015, the VA, the hospital, the Department of Veteran Affairs, but also the hospital that they will go to because they have free medical care afterwards, they in 2015 saw 1,300,000 outpatient visits just in relation to military sexual trauma. And so these the people who have experienced sexual trauma, even if they may not have reported it, they're able to seek counseling and medical care, but they have a big difficulty receiving monetary compensation for this disability because they must prove that they are suffering from a disability related to military sexual trauma, such as PTSD or depression. But the evidence required to prove that is a lot more extensive than if somebody was suffering from combat PTSD. And so the things that they are required of these higher standards of evidence are to have a formal complaint. So the military has to have record of them complaining about sexual assault during their service. As I said, only 19% of people reported that. So it's not so likely that you would have done that. And then also, or they could have, the VA staff can determine markers of sexual assault. So they can be reviewing you and then determine whether or not you've experienced sexual assault. But that is very much so up to the discretion of the VA staff members and not always 100% on the survivor's side. While I'm sure a lot of them do a really great job, I don't want to discredit all of them, but these are just the statistics that we're working with. And another thing that they need on top of either of those is a medical examiner needs to give an interview to the survivor and then declare that they have a positive opinion that this person was in fact assaulted. So these interviews can be very intrusive, very personal questions, but it is required for somebody who has experienced sexual trauma in order to prove that they have the PTSD, while somebody who has experienced combat trauma and is claiming that they have PTSD has no obligation to meet with a medical examiner. And so just kind of showing the extra loopholes or extra steps that people who have experienced sexual trauma are obligated to go through in order to receive the treatment that they need. Did you want to speak at all about your experience with the VA and how that might relate to this?
So, from my understanding, the extra steps required really hinders a person's ability to claim, like you said, claim that they were sexually assaulted, because you have to go through your chain of command once again. And if it is somebody within your chain of command, it's going to be much more difficult for you to actually report those sorts of things to the people who are important and need to be reported to. As well as that, there is, in the military, reporting anything that can be seen as a mental disorder, where you have to see a psychiatrist or talk to somebody about some sort of trauma, is highly stigmatized. So self-reporting on yourself is extremely stigmatized in the military, and that's another barrier to people who would want to report and get through these loopholes, like you said. one other thing that needs to be taken into account for is also the idea of unit cohesiveness. In the military, unit cohesiveness is extremely important. And if somebody is reporting on another person within the unit, that can work detrimentally to unit cohesiveness. If you feel like you've been sexually assaulted by somebody who you have to work closely with, and then you report that to somebody within the chain of command, that could split the unit. Some people may believe one person, some people may believe the other. And that is also another major factor for creating a wedge from people reporting their sexual assault and being able to get the benefits that they need from the VA. The VA itself is an archaic system that has been in trouble for the last few years. My own personal experience, I've had extremely long wait times, extremely long clinic times. To see a primary healthcare physician has been months at a time sometimes. Getting help through the VA can be extremely difficult. Locations are very sparse. That being said, the VA has been trying to address this issue of sporadic wait times across the board. It's been very slow, like any bureaucracy is, to counteract those sorts of things that are happening, but yeah, it's just been a very difficult situation to work through the VA. So to get through all of these loopholes and all of these challenges, including what the VA, just the bureaucracy of the VA, makes it very difficult for women or men who have been sexually assaulted within the military to get the sort of help they need. Mm-hmm. And it's been an extremely difficult barrier, and hopefully this can be addressed as more women and more reporting within the military becomes more prevalent, because like I said, there's a lot of psychological barriers and unit barriers and cultural barriers that need to be addressed before people within the military take sexual assault more seriously and address it with the sort of thing that needs to happen, because the military only works when everybody feels safe and can work together as a team. And if you have people assaulting other people within your own unit, that inherently will destroy unit cohesiveness. Mm-hmm. And you really need to work on that sort of thing. And
mm-hmm. So you're saying not only is there an effect in the VA, but it could affect them while they're serving combat as well, right? If Correct. Somebody is not cohesive within the unit or it's divided.
Correct. Yes, unit cohesiveness is one of the most important things that is stressed in the military. And sexual assault definitely is one of the major factors for breaking up unit cohesiveness. And that's why it's so highly stigmatized within the military about reporting this, because if you report this, you're reporting on somebody within your own unit, which then can affect unit cohesiveness. Mm-hmm. And if it's within the chain of command, within the people that you are directly working above or below, then that increases the split that can happen within unit cohesiveness.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about military and unit cohesiveness and the VA with us. We really appreciate that perspective, because it's not something that I have. To finish off on a more positive note, we would love to talk about self-care tips and things that you do. As this is 21 days of self-care, we want to draw attention to different methods that people are using. If you are a service member or you've experienced sexual trauma and want to talk about it or harassment, we would love to hear from you as well. So feel free to reach out to us. And also, if you have tips about self-care, we would love to hear those as well. So right now we're going to hear a few from Antonio. What do you do for self-care? And maybe when you're feeling stressed from PTSD or whatever it may be, let's hear a few of things you do.
So a few of the things that I like to do for self-care is remove myself from the situation of stress. So driving obviously is a pretty stressful situation for me a lot of times. So I like to take public transportation as much as possible. I like to ride my bike. Riding my bike is extremely therapeutic for me. I like the feel of being in control and not having to stress about the rigors of traffic, mm-hmm. or just people cutting me off or people following too closely behind me.
I also like going hiking. Hiking's an extremely fun activity for me. It's something that I stopped doing for a while, but recently picked up doing again. I also enjoy eating. I love eating food. Yeah, eating food's extremely healthy for me. It helps me release a lot of stress. Cheeseburgers, just those greasy things, really soak up a lot of stress for me. So I really enjoy that. Cooking is another one. So yeah, just really centers around staying active, eating healthy, and trying to reduce stress levels in my everyday life. And that's how I try and keep my self care going.
Eating healthy minus the cheeseburgers and
Minus
fries.
cheese. So.
But I mean, it also goes to show that, you know, self-care doesn't always have to be like eating 100% healthy. If you feel amazing when you eat a cheeseburger, or for me it's ice cream, then indulge, you know, take care of yourself and eat the food it doesn't need to be a guilty pleasure. You can just call it your self-care food, and that's the way around it. And you were also mentioning more like interesting, unique, quirky self-care activity. You said you really like long showers, correct?
Long showers are so amazing. A nice long hot shower where you can just sit down, relax. I like to imagine myself just in my own bubble. It's a space for me where I am alone. I can contemplate where I am in my life, what I'm doing. I am in my birthday suit, so there's no outside influences really. It's just me, water, and heat, and just those three factors makes me feel very very humanistic. It really brings me very much to a more primal part of my life where I can just contemplate who I am as a person, and it really helps me de-stress a lot. So yeah, long showers are very very much high on the list of things that I like to do as far as self-care goes. Yeah.
Cool. And you were mentioning like something specifically.
The ears, of course, yes. So if you don't do this, you should try this at least one time in your life. Have the shower head going, and what you should do is you should plug your ears, close your eyes, and allow the water to just start hitting you on the top of your head, and just slowly roll your head back and listen to this change of pitches that brings. It really does feel like it's raining right on top of you, and it's an incredibly unique experience to try. And I think if you haven't done it, you should definitely try it at least once in the shower. So, yeah.
Yeah, he told me about that recently, and I tried it, and it is really amazing of an experience. You feel like you're in a completely different world, and could be a great grounding technique for you. And so I thought that was a really fun, unique thing that would be cool to share with the community. Well, thank you so much, Antonio, for sharing your experience with us and talking a little bit about military, sexual assault, PTSD, and self-care. Really appreciate all that you shared.
Yeah, thank you so much for once again highlighting veterans issues on Veterans Weekend. It really means a lot to not just me, but to I'm sure a lot of other service members who are suffering from the sorts of things that you're highlighting, like sexual assault, military sexual trauma, and PTSD. And I think it's an important thing, and helping veterans is important because veterans help us all. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to all other service members. We really appreciate everything that you're doing for us. And again, if you have any experience with this and you'd like to speak out again or just speak out about it, we have different platforms for you to do that. You can reach out to us. You can share your survivor story, which we'll include a link for below. And of course, we are always still running our crowdfunding campaign for the last month. So there's only, I think, about 20-something days left. And check it out. If you are a service member who struggles with self-care and you are interested in our self-care kit, that is a great way to get self-care items delivered to your door. Regardless if you're male or female, they're going to work for everybody. So check them out. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in for another day of our 21 days of self-care. Thank you for understanding that it's a day late. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you, your comments about this video. If you have any additional things that you'd like to share from us, please leave it below in the comments. Thank you all. Have a beautiful Sunday. Thank you again.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day.